I gave them everything, but once I finished rebuilding their logistics backbone for the new expansion, they decided I was in the way. My name is Jay Halpern. I'm 52 years old. I live in Macon, Georgia. And until a few months ago, I was the operations director, in all but name, at Halpern Mechanical, my wife's family business. I married into it. That's the truth. But I earned my spot. 24 years ago, her dad, Cal, had a busted-down HVAC shop with 3 old trucks and a plastic sign that looked like it came from a flea market. I joined in when I was 28, just a guy who could run a crew and keep jobs from running late. But I learned fast, worked faster. Over 2 decades, we turned that little shop into a multi-million-dollar commercial HVAC outfit. Contracts with schools, hospitals, state buildings. We had over 80 full-time employees by the end. And I wasn't some clipboard guy watching from the sidelines. I ran ops. I trained foremen, built systems from scratch, designed the logistics routing myself when we expanded to 3 states. Cal used to say it all the time. Nobody works harder than Jay. This place runs because of him. That was before Chase. Chase is Cal's golden child, my wife's younger brother. Went off to some fancy MBA program and came back wearing loafers that probably cost more than my monthly truck lease. I tried to welcome him in. He's family. I figured maybe he'd bring some new energy. Tech, finance, growth modeling, stuff we never had time to touch. But Chase didn't want to work with me. He wanted to replace me. At first it was subtle. They started calling me old school in meetings. I laughed it off. Thought it was just teasing. Then I stopped getting invited to those meetings altogether. Suddenly, Thursday operations huddles, the one I'd been running since the Bush administration, got rescheduled for executive strategy sessions. Whole departments started shifting budgets without a word to me. I'd walk into a job site and find out we were short on chillers because the procurement model had been streamlined. Nobody told me because Chase didn't want me in the loop. But I kept doing the work. I stayed late, built new systems, streamlined inventory forecasting, optimized dispatch routes. I figured they'd see the value. They'd come around. I should have known better. That Thursday, I still remember the date, July 10th, I walked into what I thought was a staff planning sink. Cal said, "Just pop into the conference room first." I figured it was routine. Instead, I found Chase already sitting there in a tailored shirt, arms folded, and an HR rep I barely recognized sitting beside him. The envelope on the table was pink. My name printed on top. Jay, the HR woman began, voice tight. "This is a transition meeting." That was the word they used, transition. No thank you, no handshake, no appreciation for 24 years of blood and sweat. Just a shove out the door. I looked at Chase. He didn't blink, just adjusted his cufflinks like he was running a board meeting. Said something about positioning the company for future growth. I didn't even respond, because what they didn't know, what they never bothered to understand, was that the entire logistics rebuild I just completed, the one they were planning to scale with, it wasn't owned by them. I built it on my own time, on my own machines. The only working copy of OpsFlow X, the backbone of their expansion, was sitting on a drive in my garage, and I was about to remind them that old school doesn't mean obsolete. It means underestimated. Chase sat at the head of the conference room table, acting like he was on the cover of some startup magazine, tailored shirt, slicked back hair, fingers steepled like he was about to revolutionize the world. "Jay, this is about positioning the company for modern growth," he said, like he'd practiced the line in front of a mirror. His voice had that stiff, controlled tone of someone who didn't believe a word he was saying. The HR lady, Danielle, I think her name was, looked like she wanted to be anywhere but in that room. She slid the envelope toward me like it was radioactive. 3 months severance, 6 months health, and we're happy to provide transition support, resume referrals, all of that. I didn't even touch the envelope. "So, this is the timing," I said, looking straight at Chase. "Right after I completed the routing redesign and vendor consolidation, you wait until the one project nobody else could handle is done, and then you fire me?" He didn't flinch, just gave this small shrug, like it was out of his hands. "Let's not make this personal." I let out a breath through my nose. Too late for that. Danielle's eyes flicked from me to Chase and back again. She cleared her throat. This isn't a termination, it's a strategic transition. We appreciate everything you've contributed to the company. I pushed my chair back and stood up. Don't, just don't. I grabbed the envelope and walked out, not even bothering to look back. Outside, the hallway was quiet, too quiet for a Thursday morning. The crew supervisor's offices all had their doors half shut, like everyone already knew, like they'd been told to stay out of the way. I passed by the crew board, the same one I'd hand-built 12 years ago when we outgrew the magnetic whiteboard we started with. I'd hand-measured the slots, custom-mounted the pins, created the shift tracking system from scratch. It still worked better than the overpriced software Chase had tried to replace it with. As I walked past the Field Tech bullpen, a few of the guys looked up. The expression said everything: shock, confusion, guilt. These were the guys I'd backed through court dates and divorces, stood up for when the union tried to cut them loose, paid out of my own pocket once for a guy's boots when he couldn't afford the steel toes required for a new site. Now, they couldn't even meet my eyes. Elevator doors opened. That's when I saw it. Chase's new flyer, taped to the wall like some kind of mission statement. We're not building HVAS, we're building the future. Real bold, real slick, real fake. I smirked. Couldn't help it. The arrogance was laughable. Because what they didn't know, what Cal didn't know, what HR didn't know, and sure as hell what Chase didn't know, was that for the last 2 years, I'd been keeping a personal archive. Every logistics schematic I'd rebuilt on my own laptop, every vendor realignment plan, every inventory flow tracker, all stored, labeled, indexed, and backed up, under my own name. They hadn't touched a company server during development because the servers were outdated junk that couldn't even run the modules I was designing, so I used my own gear. Built it all on nights and weekends because I needed it to actually work. Halpern Mechanical didn't own a single working copy of OpsFlow X. The thing they were planning to scale the entire company with, it was mine. They fired me thinking they were cutting dead weight. But what they really did was sever the artery. And they were about to start bleeding. That night, after the dust had settled and my phone had finally stopped buzzing with severance paperwork follow-ups, I walked out to the garage. It still smelled like oil and sawdust, the way it had since we moved in 18 years ago. My old laptop sat on the corner bench, right where I'd left it, buried under a faded flannel shirt and a half-used roll of wire labeling tape. I wiped off the dust, flipped the lid open, and pressed power. The screen glowed blue, the startup chime kicked in, and then there it was, the folder I'd never let anyone else touch. OpsFlow X. Inside, every single thing I'd built for the expansion, every proprietary tool, every logistics pathway, every multi-zone calibration table, every vendor audit trail, every real-time dispatch overlay. The adaptive maintenance forecast engine that cut runtime failures by 30%. Yeah, that too. All coded, versioned, stress-tested, all mine. I hadn't touched the company's servers in over 2 years. Their system couldn't handle what I needed, so I built my own, on my own gear, nights and weekends, with a folding chair and a thermos of black coffee. I never billed them for the hours, never filed the IP, never thought I'd need to, but now I was glad I did. I plugged in the backup drive and started syncing. By morning, everything was triply backed up, cloud, drive, and hard copy. I even printed out the architecture schematic, just to be safe. Old habit. 2 days passed. I didn't tell anyone, just let the silence do its work. Then, Saturday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Jay Halpern?" a man's voice said. "Who's this?" "Jake Green, Regional Director at Ridgecore Mechanical." That name made me sit up. Ridgecore was the only shop in the Southeast big enough to go toe-to-toe with Halpern Mechanical. And they'd been trying to break into Georgia contracts for years. "I heard you're, available," Jake said. "I also heard you built something Chase and Cal don't fully understand. Can we talk?" We met Sunday.Diner off I-84, one of those old joints with sun-warped menus and bottomless coffee. He wore a work shirt with his name stitched on the chest, not a suit. I liked that. I brought the laptop. No flash, just the work. I walked him through it all, showed him a live test of the vendor sync module, showed him how the predictive allocation engine saved 3,000 man-hours during our expansion phase, ran him through compliance benchmarks, then flipped to a demo of the multi-region load balancing interface. He stared at the screen like he was seeing magic. "Chase fired you after you built this?" I nodded. "Dumbest move I've seen in 20 years. "Yeah," I said, "but I'm not here to talk about revenge." He leaned back in the booth and grinned. "That's good, because I'm not here to rent your code." That caught me off guard. "You're not?" He shook his head. "Jay, I want you, on payroll, in the seat, full title, full autonomy. You built something scalable, something we want to build with." I sat back and let that sink in. This wasn't a salvage deal. This wasn't a handout. This was an offer to lead, to own. By Monday morning, Ridgecore's legal team had already drafted the paperwork. That same afternoon, they submitted a legal claim, exclusive rights to OpsFlow X registered under Jay Halpern. Turns out, I wasn't just a guy who got fired. I was the architect of something they couldn't rebuild without me, and now I had the backing to prove it. Monday at 9 a.m., Sharp Halpern Mechanical went live with their big announcement. I watched from my kitchen, coffee in hand, leaning against the counter. The live stream was polished, corporate, scripted down to the hand gestures. There was Chase, standing front and center, blazer just a little too tight across the shoulders, trying to look like a visionary. "We call it the Next Ops Initiative," he said, smiling into the camera like he was accepting an award. "A full transformation of our operational strategy. Leaner, smarter, future-proof." I waited for my name, waited, nothing. He credited the evolution of the company to our brilliant leadership team and the trust of our executive board, said things like, "Modernization requires difficult decisions," and sometimes the future demands bold change. But not once, not a single time, did he mention the guy who built the system. 24 years, and they scrubbed me right off the map like I'd never existed. I didn't feel angry, not yet, just hollow. Then, 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed, then again and again. I glanced down and saw name after name lighting up my screen. Foreman, crew leads, ex-colleagues. Even Cal's old partner Lou, who hadn't texted me in 3 years. The Ridgecore press release had just dropped. Ridgecore Mechanical acquires exclusive operations tech from lead architect Jay Halpern, system, to be deployed in Phase 1 of Southeast expansion. The contrast wasn't subtle. While Chase was busy pretending he invented fire, Ridgecore had gone public naming names, mine at the top of the list. "Is this real?" one of my old guys texted. "Did they really cut you out?" another asked. That one stung a little. Because, yeah, they really did, and yeah, it was real. By 10:15 a.m., my email inbox was flooded with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were furious, some just confused, but they all said the same thing. We had no idea. Then the reports started rolling in. First, a text from Raul, one of the site supervisors in Tallahassee. "Dispatch is all jacked up. Techs got sent to the wrong jobs. Chase is blaming IT." Then an email from someone in Fleet Services. "Jay, do you know if they ever installed the OpsFlow sync engine? I'm looking at the code base and something's missing." That's when I started to smile, because they didn't have it. The custom sync engine, the thing that tied every routing, maintenance, and vendor coordination thread together, had never been installed on their server. It was too complex for their outdated system, so I'd kept it on my private dev terminal until they upgraded. That upgrade never came, so I never deployed it. And now they were flying blind. By 11:30 a.m., word was spreading that half the service fleet had been misrouted. Techs were showing up to the wrong buildings. School districts were complaining. Hospital jobs missed their compliance windows. Clients were demanding answers. Chase, I imagined, was probably back in that same conference room, sleeves rolled up, talking in circles about external vendor hiccups and data discrepancies. But the truth was simpler. He had no idea how the thing worked. Because he never built it. He just inherited it like a kid finding a jet engine in the garage and thinking it was a new kind of lawnmower. Meanwhile, I was at Ridgecore headquarters, onboarding with their ops director and watching my inbox explode with job inquiries and quiet congrats. I didn't respond to any of the messages from Halpern's staff. Not yet. Let 'em sweat. They wanted to erase me? Fine. But they forgot one thing. I didn't build OpsFlow X to impress anyone. I built it because I knew one day someone would try to run this system without understanding how it lived. And now they were learning that lesson the hard way. By 2 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Voicemail from Cal. Jay, let's be civil here. I think we can fix this. Give me a call when you've cooled off. I didn't call him back. There was nothing to fix. Not anymore. I forwarded the message to Ridgecore's legal team. They were already ahead of it. Their official reply went out the afternoon. All operational technology deployed prior to July 10th is protected under Mr. Halpern's intellectual property rights. Unauthorized use will be met with legal action. That same hour, I got an email from Chase. Subject line: clarification request. Hey Jay, I think there's been some confusion about what you actually built versus what was part of our internal expansion roadmap. Happy to discuss. I'm sure we can come to an understanding. I didn't even open it, just sent it straight to Ridgecore's counsel and CC'd our IP attorney. Let them handle it. The panic was starting to show. Tech blogs had already picked up the story. Some low-level IT guy must have leaked the internal outage to a writer, because I saw the headline hit Twitter within minutes. Veteran ops managers exit cripples, expansion at Halpern Mechanical. I didn't say a word publicly, but I didn't need to. The article laid it out clear. Their fleet was in disarray. Their new NextOps platform wasn't functioning. The architect of the system, gone. And Ridgecore had just locked down rights to the code they were banking their future on. By 5, I had 30 unread messages. 3 were from old clients, companies I'd personally serviced, walked job sites with, solved problems for when nobody else could. Jay just checking in, heard about the shakeup. Any chance you're taking new contracts? Another one. If Ridgecore's offering what you built, we'd love to talk. That part hit me harder than I expected. Not the attention, the trust. Because Chase still thought this was about files and code. He still believed he could explain his way out, hire a contractor, and brute force a fix. But he didn't understand what I had really built. It wasn't just logistics charts or route mapping. It was a network, a loyalty. The guys in the field, the engineers, foremen, site supervisors, they knew who had their backs, who showed up when the power went out mid-job, who stayed on the phone at midnight when a rooftop unit went offline in the middle of a snowstorm. It wasn't Chase. It sure as hell wasn't Cal. It was me. That week, I made 6 offers to people I'd worked with over the years. Engineers, ops leads, 2 of my best foremen. 4 accepted within 48 hours. No hesitation. One of them called me that night. Said, Jay, I was just waiting for the day you weren't with them anymore. That stuck with me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Clear. They took me for granted, treated me like a worn-out engine they could swap out for something flashier. But they forgot what made the machine run in the first place. It wasn't just the code, it was the people, the trust, the hours, the grind. And now I had everything I needed, the tech, the team, the backing, to build something better. They wanted me gone. Well, they got their wish, but they were about to find out what that really meant. Thursday morning, I walked onto a soundstage in downtown Atlanta, wearing a plain button-down and a Ridgecore badge clipped to my belt. Nothing flashy, just me. The panel was called Smart Infrastructure Behind the Curtain. On stage with me were Ridgecore's CEO, Nathan Fields, and a supply chain specialist from Georgia Tech. It was streamed live to a few hundred industry folks, but I knew it would hit a much wider audience within hours. Nathan opened with a few words about Ridgecore's mission, then turned it over to me. Jay Halpern, the moderator said, operations architect behind Ridgecore's new expansion strategy. Jay, you've been in this space for over 2 decades. What's changed? I clicked the remote, and the first slide popped up. A simplified breakdown of the modular routing structure I'd built into OpsFlow X. Everybody talks about speed, I said. But speed doesn't mean anything if your foundation's cracked. I didn't build our system to go faster. I built it to not break when it gets pushed. That got a few nods. I walked through the layering protocols, the automated reroute algorithms, the vendor torque compliance tables. All things that sounded dry until you realized they saved thousands of hours and millions of dollars. And I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The people watching knew. They knew exactly who I was talking about when I said, sometimes companies think if they slap new paint on an old frame, they've innovated. But the truth is, you can't modernize something you don't understand. Twitter started lighting up before I even stepped off stage. Clients chimed in with stories. Jay personally came to our school district job site at 2 a.m. when the chillers failed. Never forgot that. This guy helped us rebuild after a supplier collapse. He's the real deal. He stayed after a crew walked off and ran the whole install solo, in a thunderstorm. Meanwhile, I started hearing things from the inside. Halpern Mechanical's phones were ringing off the hook, but not with new leads. Complaints, delays, glitched invoices, missing dispatches, warranty claims stacked like unopened mail. Chase tried blaming the third-party vendors, said they had installed faulty integrations. Cal put out a statement about legacy system errors, but none of it held up, because they weren't dealing with faulty code. They were dealing with code they didn't understand. At 3:45 p.m., I got a text from one of my old junior techs, kid named Ty, smart guy I'd trained up from scratch, Sjasp Sterst. Ty, they just offered me double my salary to come back, even tossed in a signing bonus. I told them I already work for the guy who built it. I laughed out loud in my office. At the same time, Ridgecore's social media page posted a clip from the panel, just a 10-second clip of me saying, if you want a system that scales, don't start with a pitch deck. Start with the guy who knows what a job site smells like. That quote went viral in our world. Not mainstream viral, but enough to catch the eye of every contractor, vendor, logistics exec, and facility manager in the Southeast. Back at Halpern, things were unraveling faster than they could tape it back together. Someone, maybe IT, maybe Chase himself, tried accessing the back end of their old operations portal to retrieve old versions of the sync engine. But whoever it was didn't know what they were doing. By the end of the day, their entire company website was offline. Just a plain white screen with a 404 error. Clients couldn't log in. Partners couldn't see order status. Internal logs, gone. They thought they could cut me loose and keep everything I built like it was a file to copy and paste. But you can't copy experience. You can't paste loyalty. And when you fire the guy who built the whole system from his garage on nights and weekends, you'd better hope you know how it works, because if you don't, eventually the whole thing crashes, and this time they couldn't even find the login. By Friday morning, the headlines were everywhere. Industry blogs, LinkedIn feeds, local trade newsletters. Halpern Mechanical implodes amid internal shakeup. Ridgecore expands while Halpern retreats. VP removed following tech debacle. I didn't need confirmation, but I got it anyway. A text came in from one of the HR managers who'd quietly left a week earlier. Just one line, Chase is out. Apparently the board met before business hours and voted him out as VP of Strategic Ops. Cal, in what they were calling a health-related decision, stepped down from daily leadership too. Suddenly, all those faces that sat around the boardroom table when I was fired were gone. The scramble to clean up the mess had only made it worse. PR firms were churning out canned responses, trying to spin the outage as unforeseen transitional turbulence. The truth was simpler. They'd cut out the only person who knew how their system actually ran. And the clients, they weren't waiting around. That afternoon, Ridgecore made a move. We announced a joint partnership with 3 major developers, the same ones Halpern Mechanical had been chasing for years. They were tired of delays, tired of excuses, and now they had a new option. Us. I walked into our new field HQ that morning, a modest 2-story just outside Macon that Ridgecore had converted from a former steel supplier's warehouse. Still smelled like grinding oil and old copper. Felt like home. Inside, the operations team was already deep into planning. Whiteboards filled with schematics, routing trees, crew capacity flow charts. The good stuff. I stepped up to the front board. Across the top, in bold red marker, Ops Flow X Integration Plan, Phase 2. The room went quiet for a second when I walked in. Then one of the guys, Trevor, nodded and said, "We're finally working with someone who actually knows what he's doing." It caught me off guard. Trevor had been an install tech when I first trained him years ago. Back then, he couldn't even read a compressor wiring diagram without a cheat sheet. Now he was running a crew of 16. I appreciate that, I said, but this only works if we all stay sharp. No ego, no politics, just results. Heads nodded around the room. There was something different about this team. No fluff, no speeches, just people who wanted to do the work and do it right. Back at Halpern, word was contracts were slipping through their fingers. Municipal clients, facility managers, even a regional hospital, all backing away slowly. Some had already sent formal notices to terminate. The final blow came about 89 days after I got fired. Chase had been trying to secure renewal on their biggest municipal contract, a multi-million-dollar maintenance and expansion deal with the state government. He'd prepped for months, rehearsed for the review board. It didn't matter. The contract went to Ridgecore, to us. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to, because the win wasn't just about the paperwork or the money. It was what it meant. The people who mattered, the ones who depended on these systems to work, had made their choice, and they chose the builder. So, no, I didn't respond when Cal sent one last email that Friday evening. You made your point. We were wrong. I read it, closed it, deleted it. They had 24 years to make it right. They waited until the roof caved in. Me, I was already building something stronger, better, and this time, I wasn't doing it behind the scenes. This time, my name was on the door. 1 year later, I stood at a podium in front of 500 people at the National Mechanical Ops Conference in Chicago. Bright lights, AV crew, branded backdrops, a far cry from the job site trailers I used to eat lunch in. The topic they gave me was ownership, attribution, and building what lasts. I stuck to the basics. I told the story without telling the story. I talked about the risks of building systems under someone else's name, about the value of documenting your own work, about the difference between being part of something and being the thing itself. I didn't mention Chase, or Cal, or Halpern Mechanical. I didn't need to. The audience already knew who I was. The story had made the rounds. Every foreman, tech, and ops lead in that room had forwarded the articles, seen the panel clips, heard the rumors. But I didn't come to air out old wounds. I came to teach. Build your system like no one will protect it, I told them, and make damn sure you keep a copy. Afterward, I stepped down from the stage and grabbed a bottle of water, still wiping my palms on my slacks when a young guy, couldn't have been more than 24, walked up to me, nervous, shoulders tight. Said, "Mr. Halpern, sorry, Jay. I just wanted to say thanks." I nodded. "You're welcome." He looked around like someone might hear. "My boss keeps using my work without credit. He tells clients it's his design. My name's not on anything. I didn't know what to do. Your story helped me push back." I handed him my card. "Keep your logs, build your own folder, and never forget, you don't owe loyalty to people who erase you." His shoulders dropped a little, like someone had just given him permission to breathe. That night, back at my hotel, I dropped my suit coat across the armchair and kicked off my shoes. I opened my laptop to check a few last emails before bed, and that's when I saw it. An envelope. No return address. Just sitting on the desk in my hotel suite, like someone at the front desk had dropped it off during the day. I opened it. No letterhead, no logo, just handwriting I recognized. "Jay, I thought I could take what you built and slap my name on it. I thought I understood the system. I didn't. You were the builder, always were. Chase." There was no request, no apology, just those words. I read it once, then again. Then I folded it carefully and tucked it into the back of my notebook. Not out of spite, not for revenge, just to remember. They tried to wipe me from the company, from the files, from the story. But in doing that, they wrote a new one that spread faster, louder, and longer than they ever expected. The man they fired, he became the name their clients trusted most, and the reason their doors eventually closed.